I couldn't carry it alone anymore. So the next day, I drove across town to my sister Lydia's office. She was a therapist, calm and sharp, the kind of person who saw through masks before you even spoke. When I sat down, she poured me coffee and waited. "I think Clara is having an affair," I said flatly. Lydia didn't rush to comfort me. She leaned back, thinking, "Do you know yet or do you think?" "I don't have proof," I admitted, "but the signs are there. I smelled her perfume in Ethan's car. I found her scarf in a photo. She lied about her day." She nodded slowly. "It sounds suspicious, but guessing won't help you. You need facts. If you're wrong, you'll burn everything for nothing." "I'll find out," I said. Her voice softened. "Promise me you'll stay calm. Don't confront her until you know." I looked at my hands. They were steady now. "I won't confront. I'll confirm." When I left her office, the cold air hit my face like a dare. I got into my car, started the engine, and whispered to myself, "Time for the truth." That night, Clara laughed while we ate dinner. I watched her, smiling back. Every word, every glance, every move, I memorized it. She thought we were fine. She thought her secret was safe. I excused myself early, went to the garage, and stared at her car parked beside mine. I ran my hand along the bumper and nodded to myself. Tomorrow I'd know for sure, because trust dies slowly, but proof, I knew, kills quick. And I was ready for proof. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. Clara was still asleep, her hair spread across the pillow like nothing in the world was wrong. I watched her for a moment, wondering when exactly she had stopped being mine. Then I got dressed quietly and left for work. Instead of heading to the site, I drove to a small tech shop 2 towns over. The clerk barely looked old enough to shave, but he knew his gadgets. "I need something discreet," I said, "something that tracks a car without being noticed." He handed me a small black GPS tracker, no bigger than a key fob. "Battery lasts 3 days," he said. "Updates every 10 minutes." I paid in cash. By the time Clara woke, I was home again, pretending to read the paper. She kissed my head, grabbed her keys, and left for her morning yoga class. I followed her to the driveway and watched her car roll down the street. When she turned the corner, I opened the garage, crouched behind her parked SUV, and stuck the tracker under the bumper with shaking hands. It clicked in place. Just like that, my plan was alive. I told myself it was only to clear doubts, but my gut already whispered the truth. That evening, I logged into the tracking app. A small blue dot blinked on the screen. Clara's car. She was at the yoga center, just like she said. My stomach unclenched a little. Maybe I'd been wrong. Then the dot moved. Not toward home. Away. It stopped for 10 minutes at a coffee shop, then 30 minutes at a road outside town I didn't recognize. I stared at the map until my eyes blurred. It was starting. That night, she came home cheerful, holding flowers. "For you," she said, smiling. I smiled back, hiding the storm behind my teeth, because now I had a map of her lies, and I planned to follow every road. 2 days later, my phone buzzed while I was in the office. I checked the tracker app. The blue wasn't moving. It sat still in a location labeled Ethan's cabin, private property. She was supposed to be at yoga. My heart slammed in my chest. The words on the screen burned. For a moment I thought the app was wrong, but the coordinates didn't lie. Clara's car was parked there, 40 miles from town. I stared at that dot for nearly a full minute before I moved. Then I grabbed my jacket, left the office, and drove. The whole way, my hand stayed tight on the wheel. Every mile deep in the crack inside me. The gravel road leading to Ethan's cabin looked peaceful, green trees swaying under a blue sky. My stomach turned at the beauty of it. I slowed down before the gate. There they were, her car, and Ethan's black SUV beside it. My throat went dry. I didn't get out. I just sat there, engine running, eyes locked on the house in the distance. After a few minutes, a curtain shifted in one of the windows. A shadow moved. I didn't need to see more. I raised my phone and took a photo. Both cars. Time, date, coordinates. Evidence. Then I turned the car around and drove home in silence. Every bump on the road, felt like a heartbeat. Every heartbeat felt like the end of something sacred. That night, she came home smiling, saying yoga had been peaceful. I nodded, watching her hang her keys. If she noticed my stare, she ignored it. In my mind, though, I was already building walls, cold, strong walls of proof, because she had gone where no wife should go. And soon, she'd learn how far a quiet man can go when broken. The next morning, I sat at my desk, staring at the tracker's history. The little digital trail told a story Clara would never admit. She had been at Ethan's cabin 3 times in the past 2 weeks, always during yoga hours, always for at least 2 hours. I felt sick. Still, I needed one thing more, their words. That night, after she went to bed, I walked quietly to the garage. Her car was still warm from the drive home. I opened the glove box and slipped in a small voice recorder, one that activated whenever it heard sound. I tucked it under a stack of receipts, heart pounding so loud, I thought she'd hear through the walls. The next day, I watched her leave again. Same story. Yoga. I waited until she returned hours later. She kissed me lightly, said she was tired, and went upstairs to shower. I went to the garage, retrieved the recorder, and plugged it into my computer. My palms were sweating. The playback light blinked. Static. Then her voice. "You have to delete our messages," she whispered. Then Ethan's, clear and smug. "I told you, he'll never suspect." My breath caught. She laughed softly on the recording. "Still, it's risky." "I like risky," he replied, "especially when it smells like jasmine noir." I pressed pause. The room tilted. I'd heard enough. All the long years, every I love you, every quiet night together. Gone. I sat there in the dark for a long time, the recorder still in my hand, and realized I wasn't crying. The tears had burned themselves out. What replaced them was something else. Cold, focused, unstoppable, because now I had not just proof. I had their voices, their betrayal sealed forever in sound. I stayed up that night, listening to the recording again and again until the words lost meaning. When dawn came, I sat on the couch, numb. Clara came downstairs in her robe, yawning. "Did you sleep?" I shook my head. "Not really." She smiled gently. "Too much work again?" Something like that. She kissed me and poured coffee. I watched her hand move, graceful, calm, like she hadn't destroyed everything. When she left for yoga again, I called Lydia. "I have proof," I said. Her voice was soft but tense. "Oh, James, I'm not going to confront them. Not yet. I'm going to make them feel what I felt. Don't do anything you'll regret." I laughed, a sound that didn't feel like mine. Regrets already taken. I spent the next hours planning. I copied every file, the photo, GPS data, the recording, onto a flash drive. I labeled it insurance. Then I hid it inside an old book on my shelf, one Clara never touched. When she got home, I acted normal. We cooked dinner together. She told me about her yoga friends. I smiled at all the right moments. At night, when she fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling and made a silent vow. They had taught me that love can rot. Now, I'd teach them that betrayal has a price. The next morning, I started to imagine how that lesson would begin. It needed to be clean, calm, perfect. I wanted them both to crumble, not from rage, but from their own guilt. I pictured their faces when the truth hit. Ethan's fake charm cracking. Clara's mask falling. I almost smiled, because the storm was coming. And this time, I'd be the one holding the thunder. I spent the next 2 days setting my plan. Every detail mattered. I needed patience, time, and control. I started by pretending to forget. I laughed with her, held her hand, cooked her favorite meal. She relaxed slowly, believing I was still blind. When she mentioned Ethan, I even smiled. "We should have him and Melissa over soon," I said lightly. "It's been ages." She hesitated, testing my tone. "That would be nice," she said carefully. Inside, I marked the date in my mind. That night, I backed up every file again, recordings, photos, GPS maps, and sent one copy to Lydia's email, encrypted. If anything happens to me, I wrote, "Open this." The next day, I cleaned the house, fixed the dining table, bought wine. Every motion was slow and calm. I wanted the dinner to look perfect, because when masks fall, they should fall in style. I rehearsed the moment in my head, how I'd pour the wine, how I'd press play on the small Bluetooth speaker. Every time I imagined it, my heartbeat steadied. That night, Clara came to bed smiling. "You've been sweet lately," she whispered. "Just grateful," I said. "For what?" "For having such honest friends." She frowned but said nothing. When she fell asleep, I stared at her face. I remembered our wedding, the vows, the promises we made under that white arch. For years, I believed her words. Now I understood, love built on lies isn't love. It's a stage play. Tomorrow, the curtain would rise. And this time, everyone would see what kind of performance she'd been giving. I woke before her, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. The recording still echoed in my head. Her laugh, his voice, their whispers. The sound of two people destroying the world I built. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee growing cold. I thought about all the things we had shared. Our wedding day, the time we painted the nursery, the night she'd waited for me to come home tired but proud. I thought those were real. I hit play again, needing to hurt. You have to delete our messages. He'll never suspect. The laughter. I clenched my jaw until it hurt. I thought I knew what pain was when my parents died. But this was a knife that kept twisting. When Clara came down, she smiled, the same easy smile she'd used for years. "Morning, love," she said, kissing my cheek. I nodded, unable to speak. At work, I kept to myself. My employees thought I was tired. They didn't see the storm under the calm. That night, I opened my laptop and replayed every clip. Then I organized everything into folders: audio, photos, GPS. I named the main file Betrayal. I stared at that name for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, it's not the end, it's the beginning. Because I wasn't going to confront them with shouting. I wasn't going to cry or beg. They were going to feel what I felt: confusion, fear, loss. They would wonder how it all went wrong while smiling across the dinner table. And I'd be the one serving the meal. For a second, I almost laughed. Revenge wasn't anger now. It was art. And I'd make sure it was beautiful. The next few days passed quietly. I moved like an actor in a role. Calm, caring, predictable. Clara didn't notice the small changes. I started going to bed earlier, waking earlier. I stopped checking my phone when she was near. I pretended to be distracted by work. Each lie I told was a brick in the wall between us. In the evenings, I'd sit on the porch, pretending to watch the sunset. In truth, I was thinking, building a plan piece by piece. I wanted justice, but not the kind that made noise. I wanted silence that echoed. When I called Lydia, she heard something different in my voice. "You sound calm," she said carefully. "I am," I told her. "They'll learn soon." "What are you planning?" "Something honest," I said. "You ever seen someone punished with kindness?" She sighed. "James, just be careful." "I'm past careful," I said softly. "Now I'm precise." That night, Clara kissed me and said, "You seem happier lately." "I've made peace with a lot," I said. She smiled, relieved, and walked away. The next morning, I backed up the flash drive again and stored another copy in the office safe. I wanted her betrayal to live forever, unerasable proof. Later, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. There was no anger left, only clarity. They had written their story in lies. I was going to finish it in truth. And soon, they'd both sit at my table, drinking my wine, thanking me for dinner, not knowing I'd already served them the main course: exposure. The house felt strange, like it was holding its breath. Clara walked lighter, humming when she cooked. She thought the storm had passed. I made sure she believed it. Every night, I tested my smile in the mirror, practiced calm, friendly warmth, the kind that hides knives behind it. I even bought her favorite flowers one morning. For no reason, I said, Her eyes softened. I miss this version of you. Me too, I said. That evening I called Ethan. He answered cheerfully. James. What's up, man? Been too long, I said. How about you and Melissa come by Friday? I'll cook. We'll make it old times. There was a pause, a brief hesitation. Then he laughed. Sounds perfect. Melissa will love it. I could almost hear the relief in his tone. He thought the danger was gone. When I hung up, I stared at the wall clock, watching the seconds tick. The plan had taken shape. I spent the next day checking the cameras I'd installed in the dining room, small, hidden behind picture frames. I tested the speaker connection, the lighting, even the angle where the truth would unfold. That night, as Clara lay next to me reading, I whispered, Friday night will be nice. Feels like we haven't had a good dinner in ages. She smiled, unaware that Friday night would end everything she thought she controlled, because forgiveness wasn't coming. Exposure was. And I would deliver it with wine and candles. Friday arrived like any other day. Clara spent the morning fussing over what to wear. I watched her from the doorway. She looked nervous, adjusting her hair again and again. You sure you're okay with this dinner? She asked. Of course, I said, smoothing my tie. She exhaled, smiling faintly. You've been so calm lately. Maybe calm is just another word for ready, I said. When she went upstairs, I finished setting the table. The cameras were in place. The speaker sat under the sideboard, small and silent. The USB drive in my pocket felt heavier than gold. As the clock struck 6, she came down wearing the blue dress she'd worn on our anniversary. I looked at her and said softly, You look beautiful, just like the night at the cabin. She froze. What cabin? I smiled gently. Oh, maybe I'm mistaken. Her laugh came out shaky. You're being strange tonight. Just excited to see our friends, I said. She turned away, but I saw the panic bloom in her eyes. At 6:30, the doorbell rang. Ethan and Melissa stood there, smiling like everything was normal. I welcomed them in, shaking hands, hugging Melissa. The scent of wine and perfume filled the air. I poured drinks. Clara's hand trembled when she reached for her glass. The show was about to begin, and I had front row seats. Dinner began like every other friendly gathering. The table shimmered under candlelight. Melissa chatted about her new job. Ethan added jokes that made everyone laugh but me. Clara kept glancing at me, waiting for signs of anger. I gave her none. I smiled, serving steak and pouring wine like a man without a care. When the plates were cleared, I lifted my glass. A toast, I said softly. They looked up. To friendship, I began, and to honesty, the foundation of every strong marriage. Clara coughed. Ethan's smile faltered. Melissa laughed, clinking her glass against mine. Here's to honesty, she said. I drank slowly, never breaking eye contact with Clara. She looked down, twisting her napkin. So, Ethan said too loudly, how's business, James? Steady, I said. Things have a way of working out when you plan carefully. The silence after that stretched long and thin. Clara shifted in her seat, her pulse visible at her neck. I smiled kindly. Before dessert, I want to play something special. Something about truth. Melissa grinned. You're full of surprises tonight. You could say that, I replied. Clara's hand tightened on her wine glass. Ethan's grin looked brittle. The Bluetooth speaker on the sideboard blinked to life. Just something short, I said. A little reminder of what people say when they think no one's listening. Then I pressed play. If you're still here, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories, because the next few seconds changed everything. The sound filled the room. Clara's voice first, soft but clear. Ethan, he's becoming suspicious. Melissa froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Ethan's face drained of color. Turn that off, he hissed. But I didn't. The next line hit like a hammer. I told you. Ethan's voice said from the speaker, he'll never suspect. Clara gasped. Standing so fast her chair scraped the floor. James, please. I leaned back calmly. Please what? Stop playing your favorite song. Melissa's eyes darted between them. What is this? Clara's lips trembled. It's not what you think. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. You set us up. I smiled slightly. No, Ethan. You set yourselves up. I just hit play. Melissa pushed her chair back, tears already forming. How could you? She whispered, staring at her husband. He tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. Melissa, wait. She stood, shaking her head. You're disgusting. Then she turned to me. I'm so sorry, James. She left the room, her heels echoing like gunshots. The silence afterward was heavy. Clara's face was white, her eyes wild. James, please let me explain. I stood slowly, placing my glass on the table. Dinner's over. Ethan muttered something, but I didn't hear. My pulse was steady now. As Clara sobbed quietly, I looked at her once more, the woman I'd built a life with, and said the words I've been waiting to say. Enjoy dessert tomorrow morning. Then I walked out, leaving them with their guilt and the sound of their own betrayal still hanging in the air. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to an email. It came from a private address, untraceable, clean. Subject line: integrity, something we teach our children but forget to practice. Attached was an audio file, the same recording from dinner. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls, whispers. I ignored them all. The world didn't need me to speak. The truth spoke loud enough. At 2 p.m., Lydia called. James, what did you do? Just press send, I said quietly. Everyone's talking about it. You ruined them. No, I said, staring out the window. They ruined themselves. I just turned on the lights. By evening, the fallout had begun. Ethan's law firm suspended him pending ethical review. Melissa filed for divorce that same afternoon. Clara stayed locked in our bedroom, phone ringing endlessly. When I passed the door, I heard her crying, pleading into the line. I didn't go in. That night, I sat outside with a drink, watching the stars. The air smelled clean again, no perfume, no lies. I thought revenge would feel fiery, sharp. Instead, it felt cold, quiet, final. The truth had done the heavy lifting. And I realized something. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. It whispers, then walks away. The next few days were chaos for them. For me, they were peaceful. Ethan's reputation collapsed overnight. His partners withdrew from joint ventures. Clients canceled meetings. Rumors spread faster than smoke. Clara, meanwhile, couldn't step outside without whispers following her. Her friends stopped answering. Her job sent her home to take time off. One afternoon, she approached me in the kitchen. Her eyes were red. You didn't have to humiliate us like that. I looked up from my coffee. Didn't I? She flinched. We made mistakes, James. No, Clara, I said calmly. You made choices. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was work. Her lips trembled. I loved you once. I nodded. And I trusted you once. Seems we're even. She turned and walked out, shoulders shaking. I didn't follow. The next morning, I saw Ethan's car pass the house, slow and uncertain. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see me standing tall in the driveway, calm and unbroken. That evening, Lydia dropped by. She looked at me, searching. You destroyed them. No, I said. They destroyed themselves. I just stopped protecting them from the mirror. She sighed. You sound cold. Cold keeps me alive, I answered. The world that used to revolve around their lives was collapsing, piece by piece. And I didn't lift a finger to stop it. A week later, Clara showed up in the doorway with a suitcase. She looked smaller somehow, her voice barely a whisper. I'm leaving for a while, she said. I nodded. Probably best. She swallowed hard. I'll call when things settle down. I leaned against the counter. You already said enough on recording. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You're cruel. Cruel? I said quietly. No, Clara. Honest. Cruel is lying to someone who'd give you everything. She looked at me one last time. I hope someday you forgive me. I said nothing. When the door closed, the silence that followed felt lighter than air. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. The next morning, I brewed coffee and watched the sunrise over our backyard. I realized I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed who I thought she was. By noon, I saw a moving truck outside Ethan's house. Melissa stood on the porch, handing the driver keys. Ethan wasn't there. Lydia texted me later, Melissa filed. It's official. I stared at the screen, then typed back. Good. Revenge wasn't fire anymore. It was ashes, cool, gray, and clean. And I was ready to rise from it. Weeks passed. The noise faded, but the damage stayed. Ethan's firm dropped him completely. The Bar Association launched a full ethics probe. Word spread about the affair that killed a career. Clara tried to rebuild, sending apology letters I never opened. She'd lost her job, her friends, her home. As for me, I felt calm but empty. Revenge had given me silence, not joy. One night, Lydia came over again. She sat on the porch beside me. You won, you know. Did I? I asked. They're finished. You're free. I watched the stars. Freedom doesn't feel like I thought it would. She nodded slowly. Because you cared. That doesn't switch off. I thought about that long after she left. In the following days, I started clearing the house. Old photos, her clothes, every memory soaked in perfume. Each item I packed felt like lifting a weight from my chest. But deep down, I knew there was still one piece missing. I wanted closure, not just silence. And I was going to get it, even if it meant opening old wounds once more. Because the story wasn't over. Not until justice reached its last page. A month passed before I heard from Clara again. The text came late at night. Can we meet? I just need to talk. For a long minute, I considered ignoring it. Then curiosity won. Tomorrow, noon, at the cafe near the bridge, I replied. She arrived first, sitting in the corner with her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. Her eyes looked hollow, her face thinner. Thank you for coming, she whispered. I sat down but said nothing. I lost everything, she said. Ethan's gone. Melissa's lawyer is destroying him. And me, people look at me like I'm poison. I nodded. That tends to happen when you poison people. Her lip trembled. I was lonely, James. You were always working. I leaned forward. Then you should have spoken, not slept with my best friend. Tears spilled over. I'm sorry. I sighed. You're sorry now because you lost, not because you cared. She reached across the table, but I didn't move. Please, can we at least end this kindly? She asked. Kindness ended the day you lied, I said quietly. Now I'm just finishing the paperwork. She broke then, head in her hands, sobbing. People stared. I stood up, left some money for her tea, and walked out. Outside, the wind felt cleaner again. I didn't look back. That night, I called my lawyer. File for divorce, I said. No more waiting. No more pity. It was time to make the end official. The legal process was surprisingly easy. My lawyer, Mr. Patel, handled everything with quiet efficiency. She's not contesting anything, he said after our first meeting. No property disputes, no demands. Good, I said. He handed me the draft papers. Sign here and we'll file next week. I hesitated only once, looking at the empty line beside her name, the same name that used to mean home. Then I signed. Afterward, I went for a long drive, letting the wind clear the noise in my head. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt nothing. When I got home, the house was silent. Cleaner now, almost peaceful. But peace didn't last. A few days later, my lawyer called again. James, something strange came up during the settlement review. I think you should come in. My pulse quickened. What kind of strange? He hesitated. Your wife, or rather, soon-to-be ex-wife, seems to have taken out a mortgage against your house about 6 months ago. I frowned. That's impossible. I would have signed for that. She forged it, he said quietly. And here's the real kicker. The co-signer is someone named Ethan Gray. I gripped the phone. She mortgaged our home with him? I'm afraid so. The words burned through me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional now. It was financial, calculated, criminal. I hung up and stared at the walls of the home I'd built with my hands. They'd tried to steal even this. I felt the old coldness return, sharper, clearer. If they wanted money, I'd give them something far more expensive. Justice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, going through every drawer, every folder, every record I owned. Receipts, statements, contracts. I found the original property deed, comparing signatures. Clara's forgery was good, but not perfect. The slant was off. The spacing, too deliberate. Then I noticed something else. The loan documents had Ethan's digital signature attached. I smiled grimly. He'd left fingerprints all over their crime. By morning, I had a neat stack of evidence. I called my lawyer. Can we report this? Absolutely. Forgery, fraud, identity misuse, this isn't small, he said. Let's make it public. I replied. I spent the rest of the day gathering proof, scanning files, printing copies. Every click of the printer sounded like a heartbeat of revenge. That evening, I sent an anonymous tip to the police financial crimes unit. I included the documents, emails, timestamps, and Ethan's name. I knew they'd trace the source eventually, but by then it wouldn't matter. At midnight, I sat by the window with a glass of whiskey. Outside, the moon glowed cold and silver, the same color as the lies that had poisoned my life. I didn't smile. I just whispered, checkmate. The next morning, I went back to work like nothing had happened. But deep inside, I was waiting for crash. And when it came, I'd be there to watch it burn. 3 days later, it started. The news spread quietly at first. Local attorney under investigation for financial misconduct. By noon, Ethan's name was everywhere. Police raided his office, seizing files and computers. Clara's name appeared in the report as a complicit witness. I watched the broadcast in silence, sipping coffee. The reporter's voice was calm, almost polite. Authorities suspect a couple used fraudulent mortgage documents to secure large personal loans. Charges may include forgery and conspiracy to defraud. I leaned back in my chair. My phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, colleagues, even Lydia. Did you see the news? You had something to do with this, didn't you? I just replied, justice has a strange sense of timing. By evening, Ethan had been arrested. Photos of him in handcuffs flooded the internet. Clara wasn't charged yet, but her name was ruined. That night, I stood on my porch, the air cool against my skin. The wind carried the faint sound of sirens. I whispered to myself, you really should mix love and money. For the first time in months, I smiled, not out of joy, but release. The world had finally balanced its scales. After the arrests, everything moved fast. My lawyer confirmed the divorce was finalized. The house was mine again, clean, debt-free, untouchable. Clara vanished from town. Ethan lost his license, his firm, and soon his freedom. I sold the house a month later. People said I could have kept it, but I didn't want those walls anymore. Too many ghosts. I donated half of the money to a charity that helped families recover from financial abuse. The rest went into starting my new consulting business, small, honest, and fully mine. Neighbors called me the man who handled betrayal with grace. Reporters wanted interviews. I said no to all of them. One evening, as I locked the door of my new office, Lydia appeared. She smiled softly. You really did it. I just cleaned up a mess, I said. She nodded. Still, I'm proud of you. I looked out the window at the sunset, thinking of Clara and Ethan, two people who thought they could steal everything. Now they had only each other's names written on police reports. I breathed deeply. The air felt light again, free from perfume, from lies, from the weight of deceit. For the first time, I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning life. Months passed before I heard her name again. One afternoon, Lydia stopped by with that careful tone she used for bad news. Clara's back in town, she said. I didn't react. Back for what? She's staying with her cousin. I think she's struggling. Word is Ethan took a plea deal. He'll serve time. I stared at the table. So she's alone now. Yes, Lydia said softly. She asked about you. I gave a humorless smile. Let her keep wondering. That night, I sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The ache that used to live in my chest was gone. In its place was something quieter, peace maybe, or just exhaustion. By now, the story of the dinner betrayal had become small-town legend. People still whispered when they saw me, not out of pity anymore, but awe. The man who turned pain into justice. Ethan's name was poison. Clara's a ghost. Sometimes I thought about writing everything down, not for revenge, but for truth. Maybe one day I would. For now, silence said enough. A week later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a note in her handwriting. I'll never forgive myself. But thank you for showing me who I really was. I folded it once, set it in a drawer, and closed it. Not all truths need answers. I kept building my new life, brick by brick. The consulting business grew slowly, but it was honest. Every contract signed felt like starting over. Sometimes, though, late at night, I'd remember Clara's laugh. Not the fake one from the recording, but the one from years ago. The real one. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It just reminded me how far I'd come. One morning, Lydia joined me for breakfast. You seem lighter, she said. I admitted. I finally stopped looking back. She smiled. Good, because life's waiting. The days turned into weeks. I began mentoring young contractors, helping them avoid the same mistakes I'd made, in business and in love. It felt good to help again, to trust again. Then one evening, I received a message from an unknown number. Melissa here. Could we talk sometime? I stared at it for a long moment. The last time I'd seen her, she was walking out of that disastrous dinner, heartbroken. Now she wanted to talk. I typed back, sure. Coffee next week? As I hit send, I realized something. The story that began with betrayal might not end in bitterness. Maybe, just maybe, it could end with understanding. Melissa arrived early. Same cafe, same corner table where Clara once cried. Life has a strange sense of symmetry. She smiled when I walked in, though her eyes carried old sadness. James, she said, stand and hug me. We sat, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke the silence. You didn't just expose them. You freed me. I frowned. Freed you? She nodded. I lived in that man's shadow for years. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to see it. When you played that recording, it hurt, but it also opened my eyes. You did what I couldn't. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I never meant to save anyone, I said. Maybe not, she said softly, but you did. We talked for hours, not about love, but truth, about how trust, once broken, leaves space for honesty to grow. When we left the cafe, she smiled again. Take care of yourself, James. You too, Melissa. As she walked away, I realized it wasn't attraction between us. It was recognition. Two people who had seen the worst and still found a way to stand. That night, for the first time in a long while, I slept without nightmares. A few weeks later, Clara asked to meet one last time. The message was short. Please, I just need closure. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at the park where we used to walk after dinner. She looked older, her eyes shadowed but calm. Thank you for coming, she said. I wanted to say sorry, again. I know it doesn't fix anything. I nodded. No, it doesn't, but I appreciate the effort. She took a shaky breath. I was lonely, James. You were always distant, buried in work. Ethan, just listen. I stared at her. Then you should have spoken to me. You don't fix silence with betrayal. Tears welled in her eyes. I loved you. Maybe, I said quietly, but not more than you loved excitement. She broke then, covering her face. I didn't reach out this time. I loved you more than my pride, I said softly, until you made me choose. She looked up. And you chose pride? No, I said, standing. I chose peace. Then I walked away, leaving her sitting on the bench, the past finally staying behind me where it belonged. The months that followed were quiet, steady. I focused on my business, on rebuilding trust in small ways. One morning, my lawyer called with news. Your divorce settlement just cleared. You're officially done with everything." I thanked him and hung up. For a long moment, I just stood there, letting the words sink in. Done. The past had been a storm. Now the sky was clear. That afternoon, Lydia stopped by with a smile. "It's over, huh?" "Finally," I said. "We toasted with coffee instead of champagne." She laughed. "You know, not many people handle betrayal like you did." "I didn't handle it," I said. "I survived it. There's a difference." Later, alone in my office, I found the old flash drive labeled insurance. I held it in my hand, remembering the pain it once carried. Then I opened the window and tossed it into the trash bin below. Some truths need to live forever. Others need to die quietly. As the sun set, I whispered, "It's over." And for once, I believed it. The following week, I went for a walk by the river, something I hadn't done since before everything fell apart. The town looked the same, but I was different, lighter, maybe even content. Then, as fate likes to do, it twisted one last surprise. I passed a newsstand and froze. On the front page of the local paper was Ethan's face, pale, drawn, defeated. Local attorney sentenced for fraud and forgery. The article said he had been found guilty of falsifying loan documents and misusing client funds. 18 months in prison. Clara's name appeared too, this time as a complicit witness under investigation. I read it twice, then folded the paper neatly and walked away. There was no triumph for me, no victory high, just quiet. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, reading the article again. I whispered, "Justice delivered," and set it aside. I thought back to the day in Ethan's car when I smelled jasmine noir, that moment when everything changed. I realized something then. Betrayal always reveals character, not just a betrayer, but a betrayed. Because we choose what to become afterward, broken or better. I looked around my house, clean, still, peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone who'd rebuilt himself from ashes. A week after the sentencing, a letter arrived. No return address again, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Clara. Inside was a single page. "James, I'm leaving town for good. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. You were the only person who ever truly saw me. I hope you find peace, the kind I'll never have." No tears stained the page this time. Her words were clean, final. I folded it and placed it in the same drawer as her first note. Two ghosts now, side by side. That night, I sat on the porch, thinking. I didn't hate her anymore. Hate takes energy, and she didn't deserve mine. The next morning, I drove past the old house one last time. The garden was overgrown, the paint chipped. It wasn't ours anymore, just a shell of what once was. I didn't stop. I kept driving until the road curved toward the sunrise. It was time to stop looking back. Because when you survive betrayal, the greatest revenge isn't punishment. It's peace. Starting over wasn't easy, but it was honest. My business grew slowly, client by client. Word spread that I was dependable. A man who did what he said. I started mentoring small builders, sharing lessons learned the hard way. People trusted me again. One afternoon, a young contractor asked, "Mr. James, how do you stay so calm? You ever been burned?" I smiled. "Yeah, but fire can forge you if you let it." He nodded thoughtfully. After he left, I thought about those words. Maybe that's what all of this had been, a forging. Pain had shaped me into someone sharper, wiser, but also softer where it mattered. In the evenings, I'd walk by the river, the same place I'd once wandered in grief. The air felt lighter now, as if time itself had forgiven me. I began writing again, small reflections, stories about rebuilding trust, about learning that truth, even when painful, always sets you free. And slowly, the scars stopped feeling like reminders. They started feeling like proof of survival. One night, I whispered to the stars, "You were right, Lydia." Life was waiting. Months later, Melissa reached out again. "Dinner?" she texted. "You owe me one shocking evening after what you pulled." I laughed for the first time in ages. You're right. My place or yours? Mine, she replied, but no hidden speakers this time. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile. The air between us felt light, easy. We talked about work, friends, the strange peace that follows chaos. At one point, she said softly, "It's funny, we both lost everything the same night, and yet somehow we gain ourselves back." I nodded. Maybe that's how healing works. You lose what's false so you can find what's real. We clinked glasses. There was no spark, no rush of romance, just understanding. Two survivors, not looking backward anymore. As I left her house, the cool air brushed against my face. For once, I didn't feel alone. Maybe, in time, friendship could be enough. And maybe that was a real ending, quiet, clean, and earned. A year later, I hosted a small dinner at my new apartment. Lydia, a few close friends, and yes, Melissa. No big speeches, no drama, just laughter. When the plates were cleared, I stood and raised my glass. To truth, I said, it's not always kind, but it's always clean. They smiled, clinking their glasses together. As we ate dessert, Melissa leaned over and whispered, "Do you ever think about that night?" I nodded. Sometimes, but only to remember how far we've come. The laughter around me grew louder, real, untainted. When everyone left, I stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, calm and alive. In the glass reflection, I saw a man who'd lost everything and somehow gained himself back. The wind carried the faint scent of jasmine from a neighbor's window. For a moment, I froze. Then I smiled, because it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a smell, nothing more. And that, I realized, was true freedom. After that dinner, life finally settled into something normal. I woke early, worked, met clients, and came home to quiet evenings. Sometimes the quiet scared me, but most days it felt earned. Every now and then, I'd find something small that reminded me of the past. A tie Clara bought me, an old photo tucked in a book, and I'd pause. But the ache was softer now, like an echo instead of a wound. One evening, I got a letter from the state court. Ethan's release date. 18 months had passed already. I folded the paper neatly and dropped it in the drawer without opening it again. Some stories don't deserve sequels. Clara, I heard, had moved north and was working part-time at a small bookstore. Someone said she'd stopped wearing perfume altogether. That detail stayed with me. Maybe guilt lingers in scent. I sat by the window, the city lights glowing below. My reflection stared back, older, calmer. "You did it," I said quietly. Not revenge, not victory, just closure. Before bed, I opened my notebook, the one where I wrote thoughts about life. On a fresh page, I wrote, "You can survive anything if you keep your heart clean." Then I turned off the light. And for the first time in years, the darkness felt like peace instead of loneliness. Spring arrived early that year. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. Business was steady, my circle small but loyal. One morning, Lydia visited with coffee and a grin. "You look different," she said. "Older, wiser," she corrected, "and happier." I laughed. Maybe I finally learned to live without waiting for the next storm. We talked for hours about life, about forgiveness, about what comes after survival. That night, I took a walk by the river. Families laughed, couples held hands, and for once, the sight didn't sting. I was done comparing my life to others. Mine had scars, yes, but they told a story I wasn't ashamed of. When I reached the bridge, I looked down at the water and whispered, "Thank you." I wasn't sure who I was thanking, lifetime or maybe myself, but it felt right. The past no longer pulled me backward. It just walked beside me, quiet and harmless. And in that gentle stillness, I realized something simple. Peace isn't found. It's built, one honest day at a time. A few months later, Melissa invited me to another dinner. Nothing fancy, she promised. Just good food and good company. I smiled. "I'm starting to trust your dinners again." When I arrived, she was laughing in the kitchen, music playing softly. We ate, we talked, We remembered the chaos that had once linked our lives. At one point, she said, "You know, James, you owe me one shocking dinner after all that." I grinned. Let's call even. The night stretched easily, no tension, no ghosts. Just two people who had walked through fire and learned how to keep walking. As I helped her clean up, she said quietly, "You ever think about starting over? Not just with life, with someone." I thought for a moment. Maybe, but I'm not in a hurry. She smiled. Good. Neither am I. When I left, the sky was full of stars. I breathed in deeply, realizing that sometimes the most beautiful thing is a revenge or even closure. It's peace shared between people who understand pain. I drove home humming to myself, a tune that had no name but felt like freedom. Summer came, warm and easy. Work thrived. I hired 2 new employees, young and eager. I found myself smiling more often, even laughing at small things. One afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing plans when I saw a shadow in the doorway. It was Melissa. "You free for lunch?" I nodded, and we walked to the cafe by the river. Conversation flowed easily. She told me she was opening a counseling center for families, so people learn to talk before they destroy each other. I admired that. We didn't talk about love or the past. We talked about possibilities. When we parted, she said softly, "Maybe some endings are just beginnings with better timing." I thought about that all day. That evening, I watched the sunset from my balcony. The orange light bathed the city in gold. For once, I didn't see memories there, only tomorrow. I whispered, "Here's to better timing." And I meant it. A year after everything began, I decided to host one final dinner. Just close friends, Lydia, a few colleagues, and Melissa. The apartment was warm with laughter. The table glowed under candlelight, filled with food I'd cooked myself. When the plates were cleared, I stood and lifted my glass. "To truth," I said, "it's not always kind, but it's always clean." Everyone raised their glasses. We drank, smiling, real smiles this time, not masks. Later, when the guests left, I stepped out onto the balcony. The city hummed below, alive and endless. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "I'm free." There was no bitterness left, no fear, no scent of lies, only fresh air and the quiet hum of peace. And in that still moment, I realized revenge was never the point. It was just a road that led me here, to honesty, to calm, to myself. The wind carried softly through the open door, and I closed it behind me, smiling. The story was over, and for the first time, I was finally home. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share.